Thanks for joining us. I know it's early there, Eastern
Yeah.
time, but us here in the Philippines, we really appreciate it. Where are you based in Massachusetts?
Yes, yeah, I'm in Boston. And sorry about that. I don't know why that was not working. I'm on my phone now, so hopefully that's okay. Sorry if the audio was not great.
No, that's totally okay. You're just right in the nick of time as we're deep into talking about the Celtics here. So, a few weeks have passed since Boston's won the championship. Are the people in Boston still kind of like really riled up and excited, even if all the time's passed, or is it slowly subsiding by now?
Yeah, no, I think people are still excited about it. I will say in Boston, like just the general city, it does happen every couple of years that someone wins the championship. So it maybe doesn't last as long in other places, but I do think the Celtics community is going to relish this because of how long it took to get to this point and celebrate it for a really long time.
Thank you for that, Noah. Now, Joseph here, my friend, joining us in the stream is a diehard Celtics fan, has been a Celtics supporter for years and years. So, Joseph, what's the most curious thing about the Celtics championship run that you want to know that Noah, who is there covering the games, might get the answer for you?
I think I'm most curious about the team's chemistry because I've been reading a lot about the team's chemistry, but this time it really felt different. But if you compare this year's team compared to the previous season's teams, what really stood out in terms of chemistry?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think the chemistry was bad in previous years. Like there was maybe a couple years where it wasn't the best, but 2023 team was also pretty close and pretty well connected. But I think there was a couple of factors in this 2024 Celtics team that made this team stand out to me, and one of them is that this was a group that everybody was kind of like at a point in their career where they just didn't care much about individual accolades and individual recognition. And so that really helped. Like maybe Porzingis, that was 23 years old, wouldn't have been happy being the third option or the fourth option, but Porzingis at 27 was just happy to be there and happy to compete for a championship. Maybe the same for Jalen and Jason. They were happy to kind of defer to one another when the other person had it going because they've already had their all NBA selections and their big contracts and everything. So I think it was just the right time for almost everybody. And you didn't have like guys playing for money, you didn't have guys playing for contracts. And then it's funny because now you re-signed like literally everybody, and it'll be even more the case this year because everybody's under contract now. So, those are just things that maybe when you turn on the game, like people aren't thinking about, like where is somebody in their contract or have they already been named All NBA before? But it does impact kind of like the tension in the locker room and things. And I also think there was an understanding from the beginning that the only thing that mattered was winning the championship, and everybody was bought into that. And they talked about it from preseason. They talked about it with the coaching staff all the time. And I do think that ended up being kind of front of mind for everybody. And you could feel it when things were going right or not going right, that it didn't matter like the individual stats and things like that.
Awesome. Thanks for that input, Noah. Now we have a question here from Tonio who wants to ask, what was the immediate reaction to the Celtics getting Drew, him being an all-star point guard from a conference rival? Now that we know how good Drew was in the latest playoff run, hitting those big shots, the big defensive plays, really being the ultimate glue guy that a championship contender needs. When you scale back and go back to, I think that was around September when the Celtics first got Drew, was the reaction from the team, the front office, the coaching staff, expecting this, like what they actually got, or were their expectations even exceeded by how Drew performed?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I will say I've been a Celtics fan my whole life, and then I started covering the team this year, and I'm kind of unlearning being a fan. But I usually don't like trades because I'm like, oh, this person like was a part of the culture, and like I when Marcus Smart got traded for Porzingis, I was like, this is a huge mistake. That was my initial instinct, and maybe it wasn't. It was kind of like more of an emotional response than a analytical response. But when they traded for Drew Holiday, I was like, I love Robert Williams, but you got to get a Drew Holiday. Like that was my initial instinct, and I think a lot of people felt that way. And Jason Tatum talked about it on a podcast yesterday with Super and Asia Wilson. He said, I was kind of like, how could they let us get him? Like, how could Milwaukee let this happen? And then I knew we had a really good chance to win the championship. And so I think Drew Holiday took a little bit of time to acclimate, and people kind of forgot about who he is a little bit because he had a lot of games where he scored 6 points or 8 points and was pretty passive offensively. And then when the playoffs came around, he was aggressive, and he had multiple games where he was the top scorer on the Celtics, was, taking advantage of the fact that a lot of times he had the third, fourth, fifth best defender on the team on him rather than, one of the best ones. And he just changed the game in every sense, offensively, defensively. Obviously, he had, that game, that steal in Indiana that everybody's going to remember. He had an offensive rebound in that game as well, that kind of sealed the game. So he had so many plays throughout the playoff run that were not shots, but were just game-winning plays. And then he also had big scoring nights. So he kind of did everything. I thought throughout the year he was like more quiet than usual, but you know who he is, right? He's a guy who's been a multiple time All-Star, who's already won an NBA championship. And I thought that this 2024 playoff run was one of the highlights of his career. If you really look at everything that he was able to accomplish on both ends and becoming an elite shooter. So yeah, it's hard to put into words how impactful he was for this team. And maybe above everything, what we were talking about as far as like sacrifice and role, he was so willing to embrace being a number 4, number 5 option. And a lot of people would not be a year after being an all-star. And that maybe on its own is what the most unique, impactful thing about him was.
Noa Dalzell joining us, everybody. She is an NBA writer covering the Celtics for SB Nation Celtics blog and also part of the Connecticut Sun beat for the next Hoops and Swish appeal. She was there in the NBA Finals covering the Celtics. There's an alternate universe where the Blazers actually send Dame to the Heat and the Bucks probably keep Drew. And in that scenario, what does Boston do? Do they keep Smart? I mean, they still probably make the trade. They already made the trade for Porzingis, if I recall correctly, at that point.
Yep. Hmm.
Then they don't get Drew, and Derek White is really their lead guard. Does Peyton Pritchard play more minutes? So it's just an interesting question. Joseph, anything you want to know from this championship run that Noah could probably answer as well as she's been answering the other question?
Actually, not about the championship run, but I would like to know what does Noah think about the sale of the team. I don't know a lot about the economics of selling a team, but can you provide us some insights on what do you think will happen, or is there already a plan and this is a play? So I don't know. Maybe can you provide us some insights?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know a ton about who's in contention to win to kind of win the bidding war. I do know I've heard a lot of mixed things. Wick has talked about how it wasn't really him that's selling the stake; it's more his family stake, which I'd never even known that he owned a small portion of kind of his family's stake in the Celtics. So that's something that was kind of news to me. But I think the general hope around the organization is that Steve Pagliuca will become the owner because he's already one of the co-owners and he's close with the players. He's particularly close with Jaylen Brown. He does a lot of like community social justice work. He's just a good guy to have as your owner. I don't know about like from the economic side if he has that what it takes to be a competitive bidder on this. I know everybody hates the Fenway Sports Group and the Red Sox ownership. I don't follow baseball at all, but I know enough to know that that's the worst case scenario. But yeah, I think this came out as a shock to everybody. Nobody really saw this coming. And the hope is that it won't be some major transfer where now it's a completely different ownership group and who knows what they're going to do and whatnot. So yeah, it was a little bit weird timing. It was like hours after the Derek White extension and before the Jason Tatum extension. But yeah, hopefully it's they kind of keep it around at least the same sort of people, so that it doesn't become this like kind of very drastic transfer.
Yeah, I really hope
Great
it stays
thoughts.
the family because it's
Yeah.
kind of weird that you're selling a team and Vic Grousbeck will still be the governor the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So I really hope that it stays in the family and Steve Pagliuca wins the bidding.
All right. Well, let's get some more questions here. Everyone who wants to ask questions, feel free to do so. Noah, what I want to know was another reporters. When you're in a building like Boston, in Boston, finally with a chance to win a championship, and you're covering the NBA Finals as a one of the younger reporters on the beat, the experience, what's it like? What are you allowed to do, not allowed to do? Do you like not eat at all while you're at the arena because of everything that's going on? Are you trying to talk to as much people as you can? Are you trying to just stay sane while everything's going on? Personally, as another reporter, I'm like so geeked out about these thoughts. What it would be like to be in that kind of atmosphere and environment. So, could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my first year covering the team. Very fun first year, I'll have to say. And there was a learning curve of just like how to find my way and go to press rooms and know where to be and all that. At the beginning, I was only able to go to a few games because I was sharing my press pass with some other people. So it was like every game that I could go to, I was like, I'm going to get there as early as possible, which is typically 3 hours before tip off. I'm going to watch all of the warm ups. I'm not even going to go get food because there's a media room with food. And a lot of the reporters will go get dinner and miss some of the warm ups because, like, why do they need to watch the warm ups for the 900th time? But I was like, I'm not even going to go do that because I need to be by the court to see what's happening. And then eventually I ended up being able to go to all the games. And so then I think I was like a little bit less like I need to show up 3 hours before and go get food and skip dinner and all that. But still, I really liked being by the court because you could just see just the way the crowd interacts with the players and talk to people. And I think the more time you spend around, it's beneficial, like for one reason or another, whether it's getting things to clip and tweet, or it's talking to the family of players or whatever else. And so, yeah, I think for me, it was honestly like a dream come true. I've always enjoyed going to TD Garden. It's my favorite place in the world. And so being able to go for free and actually get paid for it and get to beat all these games, and particularly throughout the playoff run, it's hard to describe. It was probably the coolest thing I've ever been able to experience. And it is really chaotic. Like in the finals, it was crazy because there was so much national media there as well. So the complexion of things just changed. There was way more commotion and you couldn't go certain places. And everybody that I've ever seen on TV covering basketball was standing just in the dining room with us. Like, it was kind of wild. But during the regular season, it was just our beat, which is a pretty large beat. It's like 20 something people. But it definitely it wasn't like the finals, which was like hundreds of people from around the world all there to cover the team.
Great thoughts. And I have been in that situation where I'm just in the dining room whenever I get to go to the States and cover an NBA game live, and you see just guys you watch growing up there, and there's that oh my god moment, for a second before you kind of snap back and you're like, whoa, wait, you're here to do a job. Gotta be professional. The last thing these other journalists need is like some random person going up to them and be like, oh my god, I watched you for years. But I mean, during the World Cup in Manila, we still did that though. And they seem to enjoy it, so I'm good at that. Okay, let's get to some questions here. Nico Rocha, great question. As we have about 4 more minutes here with Noah. Hey, Noah, how did you get the chance to work for the Celtics or write about the Celtics? Was it a job you always targeted at the beginning, or was it an opportunity that just came by at the right time? Great question, Nico.
Yeah, so I actually wrote an article about this. It was my lifelong dream to cover the Celtics in particular. And I first started a Celtics website when I was 10, where I would recap the games. And then I applied to be an NBA writer for Bleacher Report when I was 13, literally thinking I had like a good chance. Like, I remember I put together a resume, and then like obviously I didn't get the job because I was in 8th grade. But it was always what I wanted to do. And then I went to college and didn't study journalism because I had talked to some people in high school and they were like, it's not a good career to go into. And so I felt like, okay, this is not really realistic. So I ended up going into a different field. And then basically a year ago, I was reading my favorite blog, which was Celtics blog, and I would always read that, their articles after games and things like that. And then all of a sudden, I saw that they were hiring like a blogger, and it was like a super low key thing for like a stipend. And yeah, I applied, and there was a writing sample. There was a couple different rounds, and then I got the job. And at first, I thought it was just like you get to write an article a week, and then I realized that you actually have the chance to go cover games. Not a lot, again, as I said at the beginning, I was sharing it. And then once I had access to going to some games, then I met other people, and through that I got like other gigs. So like the videos stuff that I do now, like that's through CLNS. It's a different company than like my original thing. So it was really like just the fact that I saw that listing. I didn't have a resume of journalism because it wasn't my background. So it's really just, this is my first year doing this. I write a lot and I talk a lot for my other career. So like some of the muscles are the same, but yeah, it was kind of just good timing that I saw that post, and I got lucky that I got the job. And then yeah, once you're in the door, it's a lot easier to kind of move and kind of find other opportunities.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, I think we have time for one more question here. Let's see. I like this. His name is Joe Mazzulistan, or her name is Joe Mazzulistan. So I'm going to pick this question. Noah, was Reggie Lewis a big influence as to why you chose Northeastern for college? Ooh, seems like
Uh,
someone who knows you well.
yeah, no, he wasn't. I honestly don't think I knew I didn't even make that connection probably until I got there. But I went to Northeastern because I got a good scholarship. So that was the reason, honestly. I didn't really want to go there because I wanted to leave Boston at the time. Now I don't, but when I was in high school, I wanted to just go far away. And, I had applied to like a million schools. I was super indecisive. And then I basically was like, I'll just go where I got the most money. And so that's why I went. So there was no good story, really.
All right, thank you for that information. Now, before I let you go, I have to ask: have you also watched The Town 18 times? Do you watch it once a week, like your guy Joe Mazzulla?
Definitely not. I've watched it. It is kind of a big movie in Boston because it's the scenery is like all Boston, right? So, but I'm not like a huge fan of like that type of movie, like the more action type of thing. So, I'm not obsessed with it, but I have watched it, so I at least know what Joe Mazzulla is talking about.
Awesome, awesome. Noa Dalzell joining us, everybody. One of the up and coming star reporters for the Celtics and in the NBA. Will we get to see you cover the whole NBA nationally in the future?
Honestly, no, I don't want to. I actually had a really tough choice trying to decide. I had two offers, one to cover the Celtics and one to cover the NBA next year. And I was conflicted because I think for a lot of people, you want to cover the NBA, but I really want to stay on the Celtics. So I'm going to be doing that.
Were you offered by SB Nation to cover the whole NBA as well?
Not SB Nation, but I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to say, but I
All
was
right, all right.
the thought of trying to figure out like what to do. And I think for a lot of people, you want to cover the NBA, but I just love like being able to engage with one fan base. And the Celtics fan base has been great to engage with this year.
Especially if they're the defending champions. Joseph, Mr. Celtics Manila, before we let Noah here go, any final thoughts or questions or anything you want to say?
Nothing. Just trying to live the summer as champs, baby.
Summer League champs?
Maybe. And shout outs to Corn Crew and shout outs to Jay and Jordan.
All right, all right. Noah, thank you so much. Hopefully, you get to visit the sports culture here in the Philippines in the
Yeah.
future. Maybe if one of the Celtics guys come here and you're on the beat, you could, visit the islands of the Philippines. And I'm sure many of the reporters and Celtics fans here in Manila would love to converse with you about the team and your time as an NBA reporter. Thank you. Keep up the great work. Anything you've got in the works that you want to tease us a little bit about? Maybe an article you're planning?
Nothing right now. I'm a little bit in a little bit of a break, so nothing much.
All
Nothing.
right, all right. And you do lives on YouTube too, right?
I was during the finals. I'm starting a podcast that'll be coming out next week, so I'll share that when that's out.
Fantastic. Share it to us and we'll share it to the community here in the
Awesome.
Philippines soon. Noah, thanks so much for
Thank-
joining us. I appreciate it
Sorry.
and all the best.